the sacking of the Spurs manager Nuno Espírito Santo just 10 Premier League games into his reign. You always said, Jamie, that you didn't feel that it was the perfect fit, Nuno with Spurs. Can you understand why they acted so soon?
Yes, I can. And I can never almost justify coming on this show or any show and speaking about a manager losing his job after 10 games, certainly 10 Premier League games. It doesn't feel right. But I don't think Nuno at Spurs ever felt right. And what I would say is I don't feel this is a bad sacking. I think it was a bad appointment initially.
Why?
I think Nuno, as a manager, his style of football, people talk about the Tottenham way. I don't think it's just the Tottenham way. I think it's a top club way, how you want to play. And I also think Nuno, how he comes across, he's very reserved, doesn't give too much away. And I think in this day and age, the media plays a big part in, how supporters view their own manager, and they hang off their every word and they analyse and dissect what a manager says. You get absolutely nothing from Nuno. That's his way. That's fine. But I don't think that's going to work at a club like Tottenham. And for me, were the results that bad to deserve being sacked after 10 Premier League games? I'd probably say no. But the performance aligned with those results is why he's lost his job. And what I want to look at is Tottenham's best manager for over 30 years is Pochettino. And the Spurs fans would love to go back to the Pochettino time of what they were doing, how they were playing. But Pochettino had a really tough start. And I just want to look at Mauricio's first 10 Premier League games. And the reason I'm choosing this, when we had him on the show, he spoke about how important that 10th game was. I think Harry Kane gets a late winner at Aston Villa. He was feeling he was going to lose his job. So let's have a look at the comparison. 10 Premier League games, Nuno v Poch. So Nuno's got more wins and he's actually got more points. We see that at the top. The reasons why Pochettino survives is because there was something to almost get behind in terms of the performances. And that's what really let Nuno down. So if you look at the Premier League ranks in terms of the goals, almost the worst in the Premier League, halfway up the Premier League, if you like. The actual XG that we look at, again, one of the worst in the Premier League here with Nuno. Under Poch, even in those early 10 games, they're creating chances, they're on the front foot. As a supporter, you're thinking, OK, we may have been a little bit unfortunate. Touches in the opposition box, night and day. Goals conceded, obviously better under Pochettino as well. Here, 9th, 14th. XG against, maybe, obviously, Lloris at that time was maybe performing really well. But what they were, and what that shows you is, they were exciting. They were good to watch. They looked like they were going to score, maybe concede in those early years. But under Nuno, their actual wins have not been convincing. They've all been by one goal. And you've come away thinking they were quite fortunate there. So I think it's as much about performance as results, and I think that shows it. And the example of Pochettino is also telling.
But could you argue that is also exactly the reason why he needed to be given more time? Because he will never know what he might have been able to do in the way that we know what Pochettino achieved.
Listen, you can look at that and you can argue because it's such a small sample size in the job. But I think the problem also for Nuno is people are looking at what he did at Wolves. He did a great job at Wolves. 7th twice in his first couple of seasons. I think an FA Cup semi-final, a great run in Europe. He did a brilliant job. But they weren't a front foot team. They were boring to watch. They got results. Now, if you're that type of manager, and there's no right or wrong in football, but if you're going to play like that, and it's not going to be entertaining, it's not going to be on the front foot, you've got to win. And he didn't win. And the games that he lost were bad ones. The ones he won, they just won 1-0. The ones they lost were sort of 3 and 4 goals in, and really poor performances. So people could criticise Tottenham, I get that, Daniel Levy, but I'll go back to my original point. This is not a bad sacking. It was a bad appointment to start with.
What's it like for players in moments like this, Dominic? Because you've been 5 years at Everton. I think you've played under 7 different managers in that time. There's all the speculation about new managers coming and going as well. Is it very hard to just focus on what you're supposed to be doing?
I think it can be. You've got to be careful that you don't lose concentration. I think as a group, the players remain the same more often than not. So you stick together and things like that through times when things are getting difficult. But particularly as a young player, you're trying to prove yourself. So I think it's when you've got a lot of managers and the turnovers quite often, you then all of a sudden, it's the same for any player really, you've got to prove yourself all over again. And I think nowadays in the Premier League, you don't get much time. So if you're not performing, I think you touched on it there, you need an identity and a philosophy. And I suppose if you're creating chances and still looking likely, then you might get a little bit more time as a player and a manager.
So when you're a player and names are being mentioned, do you find yourself Googling them, finding out what their style is, whether they like big centre forwards?
I suppose so, yeah. You're probably right. I think without thinking about it, yeah, I'd probably say, you know, you look and see if they would like a player like me, I suppose, and might get your hopes up that you've got a good chance of playing when he first comes in.
A lot of Spurs players right now are researching the style of Antonio Conte. It is being reported that they could have him as their new manager as early as tomorrow morning. Sky Sports News will keep you up to date.